Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of our Franchise Readiness Series, where we help people considering the path of business ownership understand the options and opportunities available, and how franchising could be the choice that works for them. I'm your host, Brian Wieters, Group Vice President of Franchise Development at Neighborly. I've spent over 30 years in franchising now, leading development teams at multiple brands in the quick serve, business services, and home services industries. From Frontlines to Homefront, veterans embody the Neighborly mission to build a service community that enriches people's lives by delivering remarkable experiences. It's part of the reason why organizations like Neighborly exist today. As a values-driven leader in the franchise industry, Neighborly became a founding member of VetFran in 1991 with the mission to help veterans recognize the value of their skills and choose the best path forward. VetFran is supported now by over 600 member companies of the International Franchise Association and offers financial incentives and abundant opportunities to encourage military service members and veterans to enter the world of franchise business ownership. Our guest today serves on the VetFran committee and is president of Mosquito Joe, Lou Schager Jr. Lou is a decorated Navy fighter pilot who made 5 deployments to the Persian Gulf aboard aircraft carriers, including combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. Lou served for 27 years in the U.S. Navy, where he flew F-14 and F-A-18 aircraft, graduated from the Navy Fighter Weapons School, TOPGUN, and served as the commanding officer of an F-18 squadron. Today's webinar, Lou will share his insights and experiences and illustrate how the unique skills and determination of veterans can translate into thriving franchises across various industries. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage you to participate in chat by sharing your thoughts, comments, and questions, as we will allow time for a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Lou, thanks for being here and joining us.
Brian, thanks for having me. I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to talk about our veterans, so I'm honored to be here.
Great. So let's go ahead and just dive right in and get started. So first thing I want to ask is, how did you find franchising after your Navy career?
Yeah, that's a common question I get, especially being in the mosquito control business. Well, like most things, a veteran friend approached me.
Okay.
And he got into the franchising business, and we had conversations. He knew I was transitioning out in a couple of years, and he's like, Lou, I think you'd be interested in this. Now, it's really a common path for most of my peers flying in the Navy is going with the airlines.
All right.
Although my wife would like me to do that to get some free flights all over the place, but I really wanted to reinvent myself, quite frankly.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, we were customers of Mosquito Joe for the previous 2 or 3 years. And so my friends like, Lou, I know you love the service, which is absolutely true. My wife and I we haven't missed a service since 2014.
Oh, wow.
But it really intrigued me about the opportunity to try something else in the small business world, take the skill set I learned in the Navy, both through leadership, through connecting people, through prioritization, following a playbook. It really intrigued me. And so that's what got me interested.
Interesting. Okay. So what do you think was your biggest adjustment then? I mean, it's a big difference.
Boy, I think, looking back 7 years when I started in 2017 to today, I think one of the biggest differences is HR.
Okay.
When you're in the military, you're assigned and given people, unlike in the small business world of franchising, where you're going to recruit and interviewing and hiring. That's a big difference.
Right.
And then I say this tongue in cheek, there's a big difference between the government budget and small business budget,
right.
Where back in the day, my last job in the Navy was commanding officer of Naval Air Station Oceana. And we had a $100 million budget. And I can tell you quite honestly that P&L is a little bit different as far as looking at the nooks and crannies of it than a small business owner.
Yeah.
So I think those are the 2 biggest differences. But beyond that, it's about people.
Right. Exactly. So what your experience as a Navy officer and a fighter pilot, what do you think were the things that transferred over the best, things that really, really helped you as you made the transition into small business?
There's so many. I think we'll start with leadership.
Okay.
And I'll start a conversation with people that are interested in transitioning out. When you talk about leadership, what's often lost is you have to be a good follower first, and that followership. And if you understand how to follow someone's lead and really understand how the organization works, I think that goes a long way. And so my 27 years in the Navy, I really appreciated the examples that were set for me, both good leadership and poor leadership, and taking those qualities and bringing that into the small business world. I think all veterans have experienced that, whether they were a young enlisted who just spent 4 years in the service, or
Right.
someone that, went all the way as an admiral or a general. Both of them experienced leadership challenges and opportunities to excel. And I think that is oftentimes, missed in small businesses, and veterans have that in spades.
Right. So when we translate that specifically from a veteran to actually owning a franchise or owning a small business themselves, running a very small business. Right. I've talking to our veteran franchisees over the years that are part of Neighborly, I've heard multiple things that they say that are really kind of common among
Right.
all veterans, regardless of what, like you said, regardless of whether I was a commanding officer,
Right.
I was an enlisted, doesn't matter. There's these certain commonalities. What are those skill
Right.
sets that those veterans bring to the table that really help them to launch a small business?
Yeah, great question. Number one, it's a team sport.
Okay.
In the military, you really have to have a cohesive unit to be successful.
Right.
That leader in that group, in the military or in small business, has to really set out the vision and mission, and then everyone kind of rallies around. So being a team player and teamwork is one of the great attributes that you bring on board. Discipline. And that's not to say that people that are not in the service are not disciplined, of course. But I think there's a certain element of, having to get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and getting a routine, because franchising is about systems and following processes. And that's what we do in the military. What's that standard operating procedure in the military to do X, Y, or Z? Well, that's exactly what we're doing in franchising. What's the standard operating procedure to run the operations for a Mosquito Joe business or a Dryer Vent Wizard business? Mm-hmm. We can follow that. Another element that veterans generally will bring on board is overcoming adversity and that grit. Yeah. It's not uncommon that bad things happen. Mm-hmm. Extremely bad things can happen when you're on deployment, and you have to be able to overcome that and refocus on the mission at hand. Right. When you're running a small business or in franchising, clearly some good things can happen, some challenges can come about, but that resiliency that's been built up from our veterans, I think, really comes into play when you're running a small business. And I like to tell our owners as well as our team, keep your highs lower and your lows higher, right? And try to find that nice medium so that you're exhibiting that kind of that calm, confident leadership style that attracts people to your business.
Yeah. I've heard Mary Thompson, our chief operating officer, who's a Marine Corps officer herself, talk about grit and the fact that our veterans bring that in spades. Right. This ability to overcome lots of different situations, if not all situations. Right. And being always understanding that the mission is first and foremost. Right. And in small business, unlike your missions, as an officer in small business, your mission is just to be successful and make money, right? And to change people's lives through your business. But they attack it just like they would a combat mission. Right. But failure is really not an option.
That's true. And I think I like to take that attitude into our owners, right? Mm-hmm. I want to see every one of them crush it. Every one of them succeed in providing the tools and the wherewithal to make that happen. And both our veterans and those that haven't served, I think, started viewing that quality, because at the end of the day, small business is about the resiliency, following the system, and that stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah, we talk about a lot about the traits that make a successful business owner, and so many of veterans have. One is the grit piece. There's no doubt that. Coachability, just being willing to listen and learn.
That's right.
And admit what you don't know, so you can learn more. And then this thing I call contagious positivity. Right, you just as a small business owner, you just have to be positive in most situations. Right, and that'll permeate your whole team.
That's funny you say that, because there was a time on my last deployment where the USS Lincoln had 5 months of nuclear fuel left, is what we were told. Sounds crazy, but that's what they told us. So we left on deployment with a big, because usually a deployment's 6 to 7 months. Like, well, we have to come back in 5 months. They're going to run out of fuel. Right. Well, sure enough, come 5 months, what do they say? Hey, we found some more fuel. So it got extended to 7 months. And then at the 7th month mark, and it was for good reason. They needed us to stay in the Persian Gulf because of some activities that were happening over in the area. Like, hey, we found some more fuel. We're extending it to 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And so how do you keep positive? How do you keep a sense of, mission accomplishment during those times? I think it's much easier in the military because it's life or death. Right. And so you can rally the troops but it's challenging back at home. And that's where the resiliency and the teamwork, not only within the military construct, but teamwork with your spouse back home who's dealing with things that all of us often forget when we're deployed and on the tip of the spear. But anyway, so your point before reminding me of that, staying positive through some challenging times and being able to adapt and overcome, and know that the greater good is there's goodness on the other side of this 9-month deployment now. And it was.
That's wonderful. So I want to come back to the military spouse piece in just a minute. But
Sure.
first, before I do that, what are some examples you have of some successful veterans, either in your own program or in other systems that you've seen?
Well, interestingly enough, there's about 5% of the population are veterans, right?
Yep.
And at least in our organization and through VetFran data, and I'm sure here at Naval, around 15% of our owners are veterans. And 2 years removed, our franchise business owner of the year were in the Air Force, Sarah and Sean Best, F-15 pilot, and Sean continues to serve. But they're a great example of a growing family. So they had children and they were transitioning, and Sarah was transitioning out of the Air Force. Sean continued to serve, but be a part of the business. And they have all those attributes we described earlier.
Right.
They are really mission focused. They're all about the customer service.
Right.
They are great with their employees. In fact, when I went to Florida to congratulate them and reveal to their team that they were franchise owners of the year, there were some employees that had been with them since they started, 7 years earlier. And that's an absolute tribute to Sean and Sarah and the qualities that they brought and learned and curated in the military translated so well when they were running their Mosquito Joe business.
Right.
And I have plenty of examples specifically for Mosquito Joe of some veterans that have done really well, but they all follow that model of overcoming adversity, knowing you're going to have a good day and a bad day, following the system, following the model. Right. And then it's really about the people, not only the customer facing, but also people with your employees. Yeah.
And what's been your experience with Neighborly as a whole, as far as connecting with and then supporting our veterans?
Well, we just finished our reunion this past fall, which is a collection of all the 19 service verticals coming in. And 2 years removed, we had a VetFran luncheon. And how many were there? About 50 people were there?
50 the first year.
And how many were here this most recent one? Over 200, 250?
Well over 200, yeah.
And that is it just warmed my heart to see that. And I had about 6 of my veterans were there. And I think that as a small example of what Neighborly is doing to reach out to the veterans and to connect them, not only within the Mosquito Joe construct, but across all brands, because there is a common thread that we can teach and learn. And at the end of the day, we want to bring in more of those passionate, hungry, and driven business owners, and veterans play a big role in that. So Neighborly's done a good job of reaching out.
Great. So, I think we do a good job. We're always trying to do better. Right. We're always. I have the saying with my kids I've had for years. They can quote it, but I do my best until I know better, and then I do better. So same thing for us as a company.
I'm gonna steal that one.
It works. It works well, especially when I make mistakes. When I mess up as a parent, it definitely helps. Let's go back to the military spouses.
Sure.
Right. So obviously, a military career requires buy-in from your spouse.
Yes.
Right. Small business isn't any different. We talk all the time at Neighborly about the fact when you make the decision to get into small business, it is not just a one-person decision. It is a family decision. No longer do you have a separation between your career and your home when you own a business. Once you own a business, it's all intertwined. So talk a little bit about that and how that buy-in is required.
Right. I've always said anytime I speak to a group, whether it's veterans or in the community, and you talk about the military family. As you shared earlier, I did 5 deployments. Many of my peers, some did more, some did less. But it is much, much harder being at home than it is being deployed. Right. And that may sound counterintuitive because, like, Lou, well, you're putting your life on the line. Well, sure, but I felt comfortable with the team I was with. Right. But back home, my wife dealing with the children and the bills and the accidents, and in fact, my youngest son, I missed about 23 of his first 27 months when he was born because I was deployed. Okay. And so just single parenting. Yeah. And it's challenging. And to balance all that and to stay resilient and to have leadership skills, you're leading your family and into the community. Those are the same qualities that veteran, that spouse that's serving has. And I have a high level of confidence that my wife or spouses of veterans could come on board to a franchising concept and do just as well as that veteran because of those qualities I just described. I mean, they are Ask any spouse, and they'll tell you, no, it was way harder being at home than what they were doing out on deployment.
Right.
But it is teamwork. And so I think franchising, and whether it's through Neighborly or any small business opportunities through spouses of veterans, is really a wonderful opportunity, because I know they can do great.
Yeah. So they have some of those same skill sets then.
Absolutely.
That they develop as well.
Absolutely.
Because they're kind of forced to. So, right. Especially during deployments.
That's right.
So that's interesting. That we've often thought that, and we do have military spouses that are franchisees now. We're working more and more to recruit more military spouses to be franchise owners, because of the same thing. We do believe they have some of the exact same skill sets.
And to add on to that, Brian, when I'm deployed, my spouse and all the spouses are getting together.
Right.
They're connecting, and they're sharing information, and they're helping each other out, whether it's with an event or schools or whatnot. And so there's that network and that bonding. And it's very similar to a franchise network, where they're sharing best practices. They're sharing, how to take care of this particular area that they're struggling with. And so again, a lot of those skill sets and experiences translate well into the franchising model, because it is team sport. Yeah. And they're familiar and comfortable reaching out to people they barely know and get to know them. And now good things happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I do hear from our veteran franchisees and even people that I'm speaking to and talking with about ownership, is that the camaraderie piece that's missing when they leave active duty.
Right.
And they can find that, especially in the franchise world, even more so than small business world.
Right.
Because I have another group of brothers and sisters.
That's right.
That are on the same exact mission that I'm on.
That's right.
Right. Within my brand or within my overall company.
Right. But even, I think you just hit on it. For us, I love meeting our owners and meet the team day when they come to business training week. So we have the corporate and the franchise owner relationship. Right. And then it bolts up to the Mosquito Joe network. But what Neighborly has that many don't have is, think about expanding that 19 times across 18 other concepts to connect and to leverage each other's marketing ideas and employees and business opportunities. It's a pretty unique opportunity we have here at Neighborly.
There's no doubt about it. So, well, Lou, thank you so much. We appreciate you providing us with your firsthand experience in veteran business ownership. We do have a few questions, if you've got time, that came up through the chat. I wanted to get to those real quick. There's a couple of them that have come up. So the first one came up was, how was the transition from flying fighter jets to the world of franchising and small business ownership? What was that transition like? We talked a little bit about it, but it's got to be a lot different. Your day-to-day life.
No, I did a presentation recently, and I described how my last mission over Afghanistan, flying an F-18 and looking down on the ground, I'm like, I'm wondering what the mosquito pressure is like down in Afghanistan. And that really got me going to get into the mosquito control business. It's different. Yeah. But I was grateful to be able to use the skill sets and the relationship building in the military into the small business world. And I'll give you an example. For 27 years of my Navy service, 24 of those years, I was the recipient of customer service. When I was commanding officer of a squadron, if I needed a part for a jet or I needed another aviation technician to work on an aircraft, I was going to get that because our mission was important. I never took that for granted. Well, the last 3 years of my Navy career, I was, as a commanding officer of Oceana, I was now the provider of customer service for 18 to 20,000 people coming on and off the base every day. And at Oceana, you had 70 to 75 other commanding officers that were responsible for the grocery store, the hotels, the squadrons, Navy SEALs, a variety of things. And I joke that they were all, 65 other prima donnas like me that thought they should get first in line and for all these activities. But my mantra was superior customer service every day. And I enjoyed the relationship building across all the commands at Oceana. I love prioritizing and then communicating that and mission first. So trying to make that mission. So there was a lot of the same similarities when I got into the franchising world and that relationship building, following processes. Right. So
that's great. And then the last question that came up that we had come up is about money, right? How does a veteran access the money they need to make that investment into a business?
Well, since even in the 30 years since I first joined the military, I can tell you that the communities and the government itself have done a great job of providing resources for our veterans, whether that's learning about how to write your resume, because that's a challenge of how do my skill sets as a parachute rigger in the Navy correspond to what I can do out in the outside world.
Yeah.
So those kind of pieces of advice. But as far as funding, there's a lot of great funding opportunities. I know VetFran can provide access. Usually franchisors like ourselves, we provide discounts for veterans as they come in. So there are plenty of opportunities and different SBA kind of funding that can be accessible to many of the vets. I'm sure you have some experience in that too.
Yeah, definitely. I tell people all the time, veterans especially that are coming and talking to us, is don't let the money piece stop you from having a conversation.
Right.
Because there are lots of different ways of funding a franchise. Veterans even have a few more ways available to them that other civilians don't. So don't let that stop you. Let us walk you through it, talk about it, and see what your options are. So most of the time you'll realize that once you get into it, it takes a little bit less money than you thought.
Right.
So Lou, this has all been really great information.
Thanks,
for
Brian.
all of us. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Hopefully people can see how powerful the combination of military experience and home services franchising can be for veterans. And thanks again for tuning in. As the world's largest home services company, Neighborly leads the way by helping veterans in transitioning military and their spouses achieve the dream of being in business for themselves. A Neighborly franchise is an opportunity for you to capitalize on the skills you developed in the military and receive the business training you need to follow an established system and replicate your successful military career on the home front. When the time comes and you're ready to explore franchise business ownership, you can visit our website at franchise.neighborly.com, or you can reach out to us directly for more information about Neighborly and any one of its 19 North American brands. We're always in search of talented professionals looking for their path into franchise business ownership and can help guide you on your journey and get you in touch with one of our experienced franchise developers. We've also provided a QR code, which you can see on the screen now. This will take you directly to the Neighborly franchising site, where we continue to provide insight into why you would consider opportunities within the Neighborly system. We've also provided QR codes, which you can see on the screen now. If you scan the first one, you'll be taken directly to the Neighborly franchising site to hear more from our veteran owners. If you scan the second one, you can go directly to Lou's Mosquito Joe brand for more information. Before you go, a few other reminders I have for you. A replay of this webinar will be available on our website, so you can rewatch as many times as you'd like. We'll also provide the replay link via email for you to review or share with someone else. Be sure to check your email for information and to register for our next webinar. Thank you all for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time.